Things are heating up with Saudi Arabia and the US when it comes to oil. In a surprise move, Saudi Arabia and Russia have announced that they will deepen oil cuts, sending prices higher. This could have a big impact on Americans' pockets, as gas prices are likely to rise. So what's really going on here, and how could this affect you? Hello, and welcome back to Serious Coinage. In this video, we'll discuss the recent rise in oil prices and what it implies for consumers. Oil prices are on the rise because many major oil producers are reducing output, which is bad news for consumers since it implies higher gas costs and more inflation. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and allies, OPEC+, pump almost 40% of the world's crude oil, and they have already committed to cut production by 3.66 million barrels per day, BPD, or 3.6% of global demand. This consists of 2 million BPD agreed last year and 1.66 million BPD in voluntary cuts agreed in April and extended to December 2024. The de facto head of OPEC, Saudi Arabia, promised earlier this month to significantly reduce its output in July on top of the larger OPEC+ accord to cap supplies till 2024. According to a Ministry of Energy official, the kingdom's production for the month of August 2023 will be approximately 9 million barrels per day, said the Saudi state news agency SPA. Saudi Arabia recently announced that it will continue its voluntary oil output cut of 1 million barrels per day, BPD, through the month of August, with the possibility of extending it beyond. Similarly, Russian Deputy Prime Minister Alexander Novak responded to the Saudi statement by saying Russia will also reduce oil shipments by 500,000 barrels per day in August. These reductions represent 1.5% of global production and bring OPEC+'s total promise to 5.16 million BPD. Moreover, Algeria's energy minister announced that the country will reduce oil production by an additional 20,000 barrels from August 1st through the 31st in support of Saudi Arabia and Russia's attempts to stabilize oil markets. Mohamed Oun, Libya's oil minister, claimed the move will have a beneficial effect on the trade imbalance between global producers, consumers, and the global economy. The impact of stunning oil production cuts on prices. The unexpected move, led by Saudi Arabia and Russia, drove up oil prices as desired. Before this, oil was selling for between $60 and $70 per barrel, but after production cuts, the price soared above $80. The current situation? What's the deal, and why now? The analysts note that this is a preventative measure taken by OPEC+, considering the impending economic downturn and recession. This move may be seen as the cartel's, OPEC, attempt to set a floor for oil prices at around $80 per barrel. CFRA Research's Deputy Director of Liquidity Research, Stuart Glickman, claims that OPEC+ is aggressively trying to recalculate supply and demand in anticipation of potential demand changes. He sees two major factors at play. 1. There has been considerable speculation about what China's reopening after severe shutdowns due to the unknown outbreak were terminated in late 2022 may do for the world economy. But it appears that this may not be as big of a major changer as predicted. Crude oil prices were expected to rise this year because of the increased demand for commodities that would result from China's reopening of its trade, which is expected to be inflationary. As it stands, what's happened so far is kind of overwhelming. Second, some of OPEC+'s thinking may also be motivated by apprehensions about a possible banking crisis resulting from the failure of Silicon Valley Bank and other financial institutions in the United States and Europe. The collapse in oil prices in 2008 to 2009 may still be fresh in the minds of producers. Glickman predicted that oil goes to $100 a barrel or more with these supply cuts, in the worst-case scenario if the regional financial situation does not deteriorate more and demand returns. When giving an estimate, Glickman said that, "I think they figure if they're going to err on one side or the other, they'd rather err on prices moving up a lot higher." So why is OPEC+ reducing oil production? This appears to be a preemptive measure taken by the cartel in anticipation of a downturn in global economic activity and a probable recession in the United States later this year. OPEC Plus said its move was made to ensure price stability by leveling oil prices at around $80 per barrel. Still, the output drop is a bet that represents increased demand from China, where the economy is slowly opening again after a period of rigorous lockdown and would be enough to counteract the negative impact on demand in the West. The Saudis' decision to proceed with their voluntary production decrease despite significant opposition from Joe Biden's administration is indicative of the worsening ties between Washington and Riyadh. OPEC Plus has a history of promising to reduce output, but then falling short of those promises. Traders will be on the lookout for quota violations with a keen eye. The current increase in the price of oil hinges on whether the global economy can absorb the additional cost of energy without being negatively affected. In July, Saudi Arabia began enforcing its voluntary reduction of 1 million barrels per day. This reduction was followed by a voluntary April drop of 1.16 million BPD by 8 OPEC Plus members and a group-wide reduction of 2 million BPD in October 2022. Brent crude is estimated to need to go to $80, 65 pounds, or more a barrel for Saudi Arabia, which is now chairing OPEC Plus, to be able to pay for its import bill and government expenditures. In 2020, when nations went into lockdown, the price of crude oil plunged due to a shortage of customers. OPEC Plus was forced to increase prices by sharply reducing output by more than 9 million barrels per day. Brent crude's price jumped to more than $130 per barrel following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. By March 2023, it had, however, retreated to a low of around $70 per barrel, a 15-month low. According to David Fife of the oil industry analysis firm Argus Media, the most recent production reduction may push prices past the $80 per barrel threshold. But he adds that given the sluggish global demand for oil, they might not go much higher. We are seeing a sharp slowdown in economic growth in developed countries, almost to the point of them going into recession, he claims. He continued by saying that China's requirements for oil will not significantly rise in the coming months. In the second part of the year, the market won't be as tight. U.S. response to recent supply cuts. The United States consumes more oil than any other country. This indicates that Americans' wallets took a serious blow from the recent increases in oil and gas prices. For that reason, the United States did not react enthusiastically to the supply cuts. The National Security Council has reportedly stated, "We don't think cuts are advisable at this moment given market uncertainty," as reported by several media sites. It is unclear what President Joe Biden meant when he suggested Saudi Arabia will face consequences for their production reduction last year. It's important to keep in mind that Saudi Arabia and Russia, two OPEC Plus members, aren't exactly head over heels for the US right now, so they could not really give an inch if America isn't pleased. The unexpected act by OPEC Plus could not have come at a worse moment for the United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Union, all of which are trying to minimize upward pressure on the cost of living. The price of petroleum is still important even if Western economies today are less dependent on oil than they were when OPEC first gained recognition 50 years ago. Higher oil prices increase the cost of manufacturing and transportation while lowering consumer purchasing power. After the spike in oil prices caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year, central banks had been anticipating a significant decline in inflation this year. OPEC Plus's action may extend the time it takes for inflation to begin falling. So, how do interest rates react? In theory, central banks shouldn't react quickly to a spike in oil prices and would only do so if there are ripple effects, such as firms boosting prices or making more generous pay awards to workers. In practice, if oil prices continue to rise at this point, the Federal Reserve, the Bank of England, and the European Central Bank will almost probably become more cautious in their monetary policy decisions. If OPEC Plus succeeds in constantly raising oil prices, interest rates will remain elevated for longer. According to analysts, this may also increase the risk of an economic recession. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia now views the United States as just one of several partners. On the other hand, its partnership with China becomes more significant as both countries are developing political and commercial ties, particularly through oil transactions. The recent oil production cuts by OPEC Plus are a big deal for consumers in the US and around the world. They are likely to lead to higher gas prices, which will hurt everyone who drives or takes public transportation. The cuts could also have a negative impact on inflation and economic growth. It will be interesting to see how the US and other governments respond to these developments. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to hit the notification bell and subscribe for more.